This is Dr. R. Scott Thornton, the Progressive Christian, and author of Inclusive Christianity, a progressive look at faith. Check it out at inclusivechristianity.org. Today we're going to talk about service. Clearly 70 to 80% of Jesus' ministry revolved around what would be called social justice issues. The idea that we are all equally deserving in God's eyes. This is whether we are a homeless person in the streets of Philadelphia or the President of the United States. Society attaches different values to those two people. God does not, and that is what Jesus teaches. In his only direct teaching on judgment, Jesus tells us that we will be judged not by what we believe, not by what we say, but by what we do in terms of lifting up those who are in need. So why don't we do more? Well, first, there's perspectives that get in our way. We often sometimes think that we deserve extra brownie points in the terms of increased material possessions for our hard work. Jesus does not say that that is the case. He does not teach that. That is part of what many people teach as their prosperity theology. Believe in God and he will give you everything that your heart desires. That is not what Jesus teaches, and if you don't believe me, go back and read his parable of the rich fool, or his parable of the rich man and Lazarus. You will very quickly come to realize that is not what Jesus teaches. Remember his words, and the first will be last, and the last will be first. The parable he teaches to demonstrate that is the parable of the workers in the vineyard. And the workers that come earlier in the day make the same amount as the workers who come late in the day. Doesn't seem fair to us. But the owner of the vineyard realizes that both men need to be able to feed their families, and he gives them the same. A second perspective that gets us into trouble when we look at this issue is somehow having the notion that poor people or people in need are responsible for their own plight, and that they need to lift themselves up. That's not what Jesus teaches. One, it diminishes the complexities that are involved in poverty, the complexities that are involved, the level of brokenness that's involved, if you will, in relationships, families, and communities where there is great need. But aside from that, the principle that Jesus teaches is that we are not to judge people. It is not our place, and he doesn't judge people. He does not walk up to somebody in need and say, "What got you into this situation?" Or, "What are you going to do to lift yourself back up?" No, he saw somebody in need, he felt compassion, and he addressed that need, helping to lift them up. That's what he asks us to do. Third perspective that gets us in trouble is somehow having this sense that the problem is just too huge, too overwhelming, too monumental. I mean, after all, aren't there more than 1 billion people living on less than $1 a day in the world? How am I ever to solve that problem? But Jesus doesn't ask us to solve that problem. He doesn't ask us to solve world hunger. He does ask us to help one person that we see that is hungry. He does ask us to go visit one person who's in the hospital sick. He does ask us to provide clothing for one person, and we can all do that. Now let's look at several excuses that we use that are very common. One would be lack of courage, another lack of skill, and the third lack of time. Let's face it, we all fall into a certain comfort zone, if you will, in our life. Places where we feel comfortable and that we don't want to venture too far from lest we start feeling fearful. Yet that's exactly what Jesus challenges us to do. Just as he challenged the disciples to go out with nothing but a tunic on their back and sandals on their feet. Not only does he challenge, but he commands us to take his message to the ends of the earth. So where do we get the courage to do this? We get it from him. We get it through prayer, through meditation, and in those ways tapping into the energy of that life force that we call God that will enable us to do things that we never thought we could do. We do it through getting energized at worship. We do it through connecting with other Christians, other people of faith, and when we're not strong enough to do it on our own, to do it with them. But not doing it is not an option. He challenges us to go. And where we go and do God's work in the world, He will be there. The second is lack of skill. But we all have a skill. I guarantee anybody that comes to me has enough talent to do God's work in the world. Can you dial a phone? Then you can dial and talk to a shut-in. Somebody who never gets out of the house, who would like nothing more than to get a phone call once a week from somebody. Do you have legs that work? Then you can walk to your nearest hospital to visit somebody who's recovering from an illness. Can you read? Then you can read to an adult or child who's illiterate. There's always something that you can do. We all have talents. And the third excuse, lack of time. I'm sorry, I don't want to hear it. Okay? You do have time. It's a matter of how you prioritize your time. The number of things that we do on a daily basis that do nothing to enrich the world, to make our community a better place, to bring God's will into the world, is tremendous. If instead we did service, if we looked for ways to serve other people instead of for ways for people to serve us, then we would start to experience the fullness of life that God intended. So yes, you might have to rearrange your schedule. You might have to prioritize service and then fit in things around that instead of vice versa. But I guarantee you, if you summon the courage that God can give you, if you venture out of your comfort zone and go forth and look for where the need is in the world and help through a compassionate heart to address that need, you will achieve the fullness in life that God intended. Thank you.